I got into my husband's car and found a tube of intimate lubricant in the glove box. I didn't say a word. I simply swapped it in secret for industrial superglue. And what happened next forced our neighbors to make an emergency call to the fire department. I'm so glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to my channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my revenge story from. I want to know how far it has traveled. I sat at the kitchen table. The silence in the house was as thick as morning fog, a silence that had become a constant, unwanted guest. The old clock on the wall, a wedding gift from my mother, now gone, ticked with an implacable, accusatory rhythm. Each tick was a painful reminder of a life I was beginning to suspect was a beautiful lie, meticulously constructed. My husband, Ethan, had just come back from one of his countless business dinners. He didn't look just exhausted, but haunted, as if he carried the weight of a secret too heavy to bear. His face was a map of fatigue and guilt, with new lines etched around eyes and mouth that hadn't been there before. He threw his jacket on the couch with a weariness that felt performative, loosened his tie as if it were a noose he was desperate to escape, and collapsed on the bed, the familiar springs groaning under his weight, not even bothering to shower. The faint scent of his expensive cologne hung in the air, but it was mixed with a new and foreign fragrance, a sweet, floral perfume that felt like an intrusion, a brazen confession of a life I hadn't known he was living. Minutes later, the soft purr of his snores filled the house, a sound that had once comforted me but now seemed a mocking lullaby. A lullaby for a fool. I stood, moving with the calm, practiced grace of a 40-year-old wife, and started to pick up the mess he'd left in the living room. His jacket, his wallet, his cell phone, his old laptop. The phone screen was still on a new email glowing like a sinister omen. I frowned. Ethan never used email. He always said, "Nathan, all this technology is too complicated. I'd rather make a call." But now, an email. It was there, in plain sight. A digital ghost of a life I didn't know he was leading. With a morbid curiosity that felt both wrong and necessary, I opened it. The message was short, just a handful of words that would shatter my world. "You were amazing tonight, Dad." Then came a red heart, a symbol of affection that pierced mine with a cold, stabbing pain. I froze, as if someone had slapped me. The digital world was a cruel mirror, reflecting a truth I'd been too terrified to see. Dad. The word echoed in my mind. Who called him that? And in such an intimate, affectionate tone? I scrolled down, thumb trembling, looking for more clues. But there was nothing. Just a strange email address, a jumble of meaningless characters that offered no answers, only more questions. A chill ran through me, not from cold but from a deep, bone-soaking fear. It was like an icy wind slipping through a crack in the door of my life, revealing a secret chamber I'd never known existed. I looked toward the bedroom and saw Ethan roll over with a snort, his face calm, serene, a raw, irritating contrast to the storm raging inside me. My heart pounded like a thief's, a frantic, guilty rhythm. I set the phone back quickly, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. I kept tidying up, my movements now mechanical, robotic. I gathered his dirty clothes to take to the wash. When I checked the pants pockets, I felt a crisp, freshly folded paper. It was a receipt from an upscale steakhouse in Birmingham, dated that very night. I frowned. Birmingham? He'd told me he was meeting his partners in London. A bitter little laugh escaped me. Ethan hated driving to London. Birmingham, on the other hand, was where his mother had lived before she died. He had fond memories of it, a fact he'd told me many times. But who had he dined with in Birmingham while lying to me that he was in London? The receipt showed a table for two, a bottle of pricey Tempranillo, the same wine he bought me for our 10th anniversary, a wine I never forgot, and steak and pasta for mains. I tried to remember the last time Ethan had taken me somewhere like that. Maybe 10 years ago, when I opened my first bakery. That memory is etched in my mind. The flicker of candlelight, his proud smile, the way he toasted to my success. Now that memory was a lie, a faded photograph in an album of deceptions. I pulled out my own phone and, with quiet, steady resolve, snapped photos of the receipt and the email. I didn't want to believe it, but a woman's intuition, the intuition of a 40-year-old wife, is a primitive, deep knowing. Something was happening, and I had to find out what. My hands shook, not just with rage, but with a profound, existential dread. I felt like I was on the edge of a cliff, about to watch the spectacular collapse of my entire life. I went to the garage. Ethan's old SUV was still warm, the air heavy with the smell of gasoline and that sweet perfume clinging to his clothes. I opened the door, a small, cold knot twisting in my stomach. I flicked on the flashlight and checked every corner of the driver's seat. Nothing out of the ordinary, just loose coins and an empty water bottle. But when I slid my hand into the glove box on the passenger side, my fingers brushed something plastic and slick. I pulled it out, and my heart nearly stopped. A used tube of intimate lubricant, with dried residue on the cap, a sticky, damning piece of evidence. I stood there in the dark garage, staring at it as if it were a dirty secret, a tangible manifestation of my worst fears. Ethan and I hadn't been intimate for years. He always said he was tired, that age had sapped his desire. Then who was that lubricant for? The question echoed in my mind, each syllable like a hammer blow to my fragile reality. I felt paralyzed, but I kept a cool head. A survival instinct kicked in. I put it back exactly where I'd found it. I wiped my hands with a napkin, scrubbing until they were raw, as if I were afraid the betrayal would leave a permanent mark on my skin. I kept searching, this time more carefully, more methodically. Beneath the back seat I found some crumpled napkins, soaked in a sweet, floral perfume that wasn't a man's and wasn't my own soft, familiar rose scent. The smell was foreign, defiant, a vulgar scream of infidelity in the quiet sanctuary of our garage. I photographed everything, the lubricant, the napkins, as if I could capture the scent in an image. I shut the car and went back inside, the weight of the evidence crushing me, heavier than any sack of flour I'd ever lifted. I sat at the kitchen table, my hands shaking uncontrollably, and picked up Ethan's phone again. By then I was almost sure he was cheating on me. I checked his messages, but there were only work chats, cold and dry, like a desert landscape. His inbox was empty, except for that strange email. I checked the sent and drafts folders. Nothing. Everything was too clean, too perfect, suspiciously perfect, as if he'd scrubbed every trace of his deceit. A master of lying, I thought bitterly. My rage was now a cold, hard stone in my chest, and a new, more dangerous emotion began to stir inside me. A hunger for truth, the need to unmask the lie, whatever it cost. The next morning, just as the sun rose and soft light filtered through the curtains, I was already awake, a ghost in my own house. The image of the lubricant, the restaurant receipt, and that email kept circling in my head, a poisonous carousel of doubts. I was in the kitchen, hands busy but mind a frantic whirlwind. I made a simple breakfast, 2 fried eggs, toast, and a cup of the strong black coffee Ethan liked. I'd barely slept. Ethan came down looking tired, hair mussed and eyes bleary. He sat at the table, picked up his cup, took a sip, and set it down half full. "I have an important meeting today," he said hoarsely, a rehearsed line he'd used countless times, not meeting my eyes. "I'll probably be late." He was so good at this, I thought. The effortless lies, the casual tone, it chilled my blood. I nodded with a forced smile, although all I wanted was to scream, "Where's the meeting? With whom? In Birmingham again?" I held back. My rage was a silent fire, and I only said, "All right, take care." He stood, patted my shoulder lightly, a gesture that felt more like a formality than affection, and left. The door closed, leaving the kitchen in silence, and me with a suspicion growing into a monstrous certainty. I cleared the table and washed the dishes one by one, the rhythm of the task a small anchor in the storm of my emotions. I couldn't just sit there inventing theories. I needed the truth, hard proof. I picked up the phone and searched for the number of Mrs. Miller, an old friend who helped me so much when I opened the bakery. Once, She mentioned a good private investigator who specialized in infidelity. "Nathan, if you ever need it, I can give you Peter's number," she'd said. "He's very discreet and trustworthy." I never imagined I'd have to call him, but now I had no other choice. I dialed, my voice trembling, each ring a drumbeat marking my rising anxiety. "Hello, Mrs. Miller. Could you help me get in touch with Peter? I need him." She stayed quiet for a few seconds, a pause that spoke volumes, before answering. "Nathan, what's going on? Did Ethan do something?" I sighed, not wanting to go into details over the phone, my pride bruised and raw. "I just need to know the truth. Can you help me?" Mrs. Miller, a woman of few words but deep intuition, agreed right away, and barely an hour later, I received a message from Peter setting a meeting for noon in a cafe downtown. "Mrs. Hart, please don't worry. I will help you," he wrote. The message was brief, but it was enough to give me a little relief. A lifeline in a sea of lies. At noon, I went to the cafe, a small place with worn wooden tables and the smell of roasted coffee filling the air, a scent that used to comfort me but now felt strangely alien. I chose a secluded corner where no one would notice me, a shadow in a sunlit room. Peter walked in, a middle-aged man, short and solid, in a simple light blue shirt and with sharp eyes that seemed to read everything, to see beyond the surface. I handed him a flash drive with the photos I'd taken the night before, the strange email, the restaurant receipt, the tube of lubricant, and the napkins. "This is all I have," I said with a shaky voice. "I'm not sure, but I think my husband is cheating on me." The words tasted like ash. Peter nodded, reviewing each image on his phone, expressionless, a professional facade hiding whatever he might think. He took careful notes in a small notebook. "Mrs. Hart, I understand. I'll start following Mr. Hart this afternoon. Don't worry, I'll let you know as soon as possible." I looked at him, holding back the tears burning my eyes. "Thank you," I said softly. "I just want to know the truth, whatever it is." Peter nodded with a compassionate look, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. "I'll do everything I can. Go home and don't do anything that might arouse suspicion." I left the cafe and walked among the crowd, but I felt a loneliness I'd never known. 40 years of marriage, a life built on a bedrock of trust now crumbling beneath my feet. I'd put all my faith in Ethan. I always believed he was a family man, someone who'd stand with me through any hardship. He was my rock, my anchor. And now here I was, hiring a stranger to tail my own husband. The irony was a bitter draft. I felt like I was in a bad movie, a character in a drama I'd never auditioned for. That night, while I was at the bakery, with the familiar smell of yeast and flour, a constant, comforting presence going over delivery invoices, the phone buzzed. A message from Mr. Peter. I opened it with my heart hammering, blood roaring in my ears. It was a photo of Ethan in the light blue shirt he often wore, walking into an upscale restaurant, hand in hand with a woman. I zoomed in, and my heart stopped. It was Melissa, my daughter-in-law. She wore a tight black dress, heavy makeup, lipstick a vivid red, and her hair loose. They didn't look like father-in-law and daughter-in-law, but like a couple on a date. Their bodies turned toward each other, a secret shared between them. I collapsed into a chair, my hand trembling as I held the phone. Melissa. How was that possible? At family gatherings, she and Ethan always acted distant, barely spoke. Now I realized it had been a masterful performance, a stage play to fool me. Mr. Peter sent more photos. In one, they were seated in a secluded corner, the table dressed with candles and flowers. Melissa leaned toward him, smiling, and Ethan toasted her with a strangely tender look. I saw the photo and felt a crushing pain in my chest. In 40 years, I had never seen him look at me like that, not even when we were young. When I was that girl from Brighton with long hair and a radiant smile, he had looked at me like that, with genuine adoration, with a love I thought was mine. Now it was hers. At midnight, a video arrived from Mr. Peter. The clock on the wall read 2 a.m. I put on my headphones, a desperate attempt to keep the secret contained, and hit play. my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. In the video, Melissa leaned to Ethan's ear and whispered something that made him laugh out loud, a sound I didn't recognize. Her voice sounded sweet, her eyes shining under the restaurant lights. Then they stood up and left, and Ethan, ever the gentleman, opened the car door for her as if she were his lady and he her lover. I replayed the video over and over, an act of self-inflicted torture. Each time was another knife to the heart. Melissa, my daughter-in-law, whom I treated like a daughter, whom I taught to make our family's traditional flan, and Ethan, the man I gave my life to, with whom I built a family. What were they doing behind my back? Behind Nathan's back? The questions were a wave ready to drown me. I saved all the photos and the video to a drive, noting every detail, date, time, place, even the name of the restaurant. My hands worked on autopilot, but my mind was chaos. I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't believe that Ethan and Melissa were capable of something so low, so cruel. But the evidence was right there, undeniable, a mountain of proof. I stayed at the bakery, surrounded by trays of sweet pastries that smelled delicious, while feeling my world fall apart. I remembered the early days of the business, when Ethan helped me carry sacks of flour, when we laughed together in that tiny kitchen, our dreams as big as the sky. Now it all felt like a distant memory, a beautiful lie I'd lived for far too long. The next morning, I was in the bakery's little kitchen holding a list of orders for a big downtown hotel. The smell of flour and vanilla, which always brought me peace, felt empty that day, a hollow comfort. As soon as I finished signing the delivery slip, my phone vibrated in my apron pocket. I wiped my hands, and my heart lurched when I saw it was a message from the detective. Just a short sentence. "Mrs. Hart, I'm sending more evidence." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, but my hands shook as I opened the message. A series of photos appeared on the screen. The first showed Ethan in his usual gray shirt, coming out of a law office near the main square. Beside him walked Melissa in a beige office dress, her hair in a high ponytail, and huge dark sunglasses that almost covered her face, a pathetic attempt at anonymity. They walked very close, not like father-in-law and daughter-in-law, but like a couple. Their bodies testified to their forbidden bond. In the next photo, they were in front of a 4-star hotel with gleaming glass doors and a golden sign. I zoomed in, desperately looking for anything that denied what I was seeing, but there was nothing. They looked too natural, too comfortable together, part of a world I did not belong to. Then a short video came from Mr. Peter. I pressed play, and my heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst, a frantic drum against my ribs. The shot was distant but clear enough to see Ethan and Melissa on the 3rd-floor balcony of the hotel. He wrapped her by the waist, and she rested her head on his shoulder, her long hair moving softly in the wind. And then, like a stab, I saw them share a quick kiss, making no effort to hide. It was brief, but enough to burn the last spark of hope I had left. I replayed the video frame by frame, each image digging deeper into my soul, a slow, agonizing descent into hell. The room curtain opened a bit, and Melissa ran out to hug Ethan, her face lit with happiness, like a girl in love. I collapsed into a chair, clutching the edge of the table so I wouldn't fall apart. "Mr. Peter wrote. They also rented the room in the afternoon. Looks like they're staying the night. I'll keep watch." I read the message over and over, my throat tight, as if someone were strangling me. A few hours earlier, Ethan had written me, "Nathan, I won't be home tonight. I have to see a potential partner from out of town. Rest." The tone was sweet and affectionate, as it had been for years. But now I knew it was all a lie. A well-constructed lie. A potential partner from out of town. He wasn't out of town. He was here, in a 4-star hotel, with our own daughter-in-law. I opened my portable drive and carefully saved each photo and each video. Every time I hit save, I stared at the image to make sure I wasn't dreaming. In the video, the way Ethan looked at Melissa was so tender. The way he stroked her hair reminded me of how he used to do it with me more than 30 years ago. We were young, and I believed our love would last forever. a promise whispered under Brighton's starry sky. Now, seeing this, I saw only lies and brazen betrayal. I remembered family gatherings, all of us sitting around the table, a picture of our perfect family. Melissa always sat far from Ethan. Sometimes she even looked at him with disdain. Nathan would joke, "Mom, I think Melissa can't stand Dad. She avoids him like the plague." I believed it too. I thought they just didn't get along, that she was trying to fit into the family. But now I understood it had all been a farce, a carefully choreographed dance of deceit. They acted too well in front of me, in front of Nathan, in front of the whole neighborhood. I felt like a fool, a blind wife, betrayed by two traitors right under my nose. People went on with their lives, oblivious to what was happening on that hotel balcony. But Mr. Peter had captured the perfect moment, like a silent hunter, a snapshot of my reality. I replied, "Thank you. Please keep watching. I need to know everything." He answered briefly, "I will. Stay calm." That night, I returned to the house that had been my home with Ethan. Now it felt foreign, a place of ghosts and lies. I opened the drawer of the dresser and pulled out a thick envelope, my hands moving with a somber resolve. I printed all the evidence: photos of Ethan and Melissa leaving the law office, photos of them entering the hotel, photos on the balcony, and every frame of the video. I arranged them carefully, sealed the envelope, and hid it at the back of the drawer under old family photos. I looked at a picture of the four of us: Ethan, Melissa, Nathan, and me at Nathan's birthday a few years ago. Melissa smiled, hugging Nathan tightly, while Ethan stood beside me with his arm over my shoulder, proud. Now, seeing it, all I wanted was to tear it to pieces, to rip their smiling faces out of my life. The next morning, just before dawn, I heard the front door open quietly. Ethan stumbled in, reeking of alcohol. "The partner was really difficult, Nathan," he complained hoarsely, his eyes red as if he'd been up all night. "I had to drink a lot. I'm dead." I was in the kitchen with a glass of water in my hand, watching him act while I felt him rubbing salt into my wound. "Rest," I answered calmly, like always, in the trained voice of a wife. "You have to work tomorrow." He nodded, patted my shoulder as if nothing had happened, and dragged himself to the bedroom. Minutes later, he was snoring peacefully, as if he'd never cheated on me, as if he'd never gone to a hotel with our own daughter-in-law. When I was sure he was asleep, the phone vibrated. It was a call from the detective, Mr. Peter. His voice was low, almost a whisper, as if he feared someone might hear. "Mrs. Hart." I recorded their conversation in the hotel parking lot. I used special equipment. They didn't notice. "I'm sending it now." My heart pounded, but I only replied, "Thank you, Peter. Send me the file." Minutes later, an audio file showed up in my messages. I put on my headphones, sat at the table, and pressed play. The first thing I heard was Melissa's voice, cold and ambitious, the voice of a stranger. "Dad, hurry up with that fake contract. I want that whole chain of stores already. I want that old woman out of the house." I felt a blow to my chest and gripped the phone tight. Then came Ethan's voice, deep and assured. "Don't worry about those papers. Nathan doesn't know a thing. Leave it to me. She trusts me too much." It was like a knife twisting in my heart. They weren't just cheating. They were planning to take everything I had built, the chain of bakeries, all the sweat, the tears, the sleepless nights, baking every batch, racing across the city to deliver on time and keep my reputation. It was all mine. Ethan had never dirtied his hands in the kitchen. He never worked the counter or signed contracts with hotels. And now he and Melissa wanted to take it all, to throw me out of the home I had made. I almost collapsed, but I had the presence of mind to copy the audio to the drive where I kept everything else. I carefully noted the time and place, as if clinging to solid ground in the middle of a storm. The following morning, while I was making coffee at the bakery, the phone buzzed again. Peter sent another batch of telephoto shots. In them, Ethan and Melissa were in his car with a thick stack of papers in front of them. Melissa held a red pen and was marking the document carefully. Ethan, beside her, nodded and smiled as if he fully agreed. Peter wrote, "I managed to overhear something. Looks like they want to use a contact at the notary's office to do the transfer. I'll investigate further. I zoomed in. I could see letters on the paper, though I couldn't read them. But I knew they weren't normal work papers. They planned to rob me of everything in stages, step by step. I stood there among trays of pastries that smelled wonderful, feeling my world come crashing down. I opened the audio again, put on my headphones, and listened to every phrase, every word they said. That disgusting old woman. That's what Melissa called me. I remembered the days when she first joined the family, when I taught her to make rice, when I embraced her like a daughter. I believed she was part of the family, that she would be the woman who, along with Nathan, would build a future. And Ethan, the man I'd loved since I was a girl in Brighton, who swore to be with me until the end. They had played me a cruel joke. Me, the fool who still believed in love and family. A regular customer came in, Mrs. Parker, who always bought pastries for her grandchildren. Nathan, your bakery has been packed lately. Your chain is expanding. I'm so proud of you, she said warmly. I forced a smile and replied, thank you. I do what I can. But inside I was a wreck. I wondered what she would think if she knew the truth. Would she see me as a strong woman, or just a fool betrayed by her husband and her daughter-in-law? I boxed up her pastries, saw her to the door, and sank into a chair with my head in my hands. I wanted to cry, but no tears came. Instead, a silent rage burned inside me like an oven's fire, ready to blaze at any moment. That night at dinner, I sat across from Ethan in the small kitchen, under the yellow light that gave his face a strange, distorted glow. He ate and spoke in a monotone, as if nothing were wrong, as if the world weren't about to end. Nathan, I have to sign some important business papers this week. Maybe you should look them over. They're complicated. I broke a piece of bread and pretended to bite it, but, in my head, I only heard Melissa's voice in the recording. Dad, hurry up and sign the fake contracts. I knew he was testing the waters. He wanted to drag me into his dirty plan. I gave him a dry smile, the facade of a wife too tired to argue, and answered, yes, I'll look at them later. I'm tired now. He nodded, sipped his wine, looking at me as if nothing were happening. But I knew that behind that smile was a man willing to take everything I'd built. A predator waiting for the exact moment to attack. Ethan had a few more drinks. His face flushed, and he began slurring his words about a difficult client he'd seen that day. I nodded as if I were listening, but inside I wanted to scream, do you think I'm that stupid? When he stood, staggering, and headed to the bedroom, I cleared the table, each movement slow, holding back the fury boiling inside me. He dropped onto the bed, snoring loudly, and left his car keys on the nightstand, gleaming under the dim light like a siren call to my revenge. I stared at them, my heart pounding. This was my chance, my moment. I slipped into the bedroom quietly, careful not to make a sound. Every step was like walking between pain and determination, between the past and an unknown future. I took the keys, squeezed them tight, and went straight to the garage. The night was still, silent, as if the world were holding its breath. The only sound was the crickets outside, their song the soundtrack to my silent fury. I switched on my phone's flashlight. The weak beam lit Ethan's old SUV, a silent accomplice to his betrayal. I opened the door. The smell of gasoline was still there, mixed with that strange, sweet perfume. I opened the center console glove compartment, and there it was, the tube of lubricant with the loose cap and dried residue on the rim, a monument to his infidelity. I held it in my hand, feeling like I was gripping a dirty secret. It was obvious they'd used it again, as if it were confirmation that Ethan and Melissa were still playing their secret game, their twisted little dance. I took the tube to the kitchen, set it on the counter, and washed my hands with lemon soap. I scrubbed thoroughly, as if to erase every trace of the betrayal I'd just touched. The fresh scent didn't calm my rage, but it helped me focus. I opened the tool drawer and took out a tube of clear industrial superglue, the same kind I once used to fix a chair at the bakery. A tool of my trade, now turned into a weapon of my revenge. I carefully unscrewed the lubricant's cap and refilled it with glue, drop by drop, until it was full. I wiped the nozzle, shook it gently to mix, and tested a little. It came out smoothly, just like the original lubricant. To the naked eye, no one would notice the difference. I smiled faintly, though a hurricane was roaring inside me. This wasn't a game. It was the first step toward justice. I put the tube back in the glove box, adjusted the floor mat, the seat just as they'd been, as if no one had touched anything, and shut the car. I opened the trunk to check. There were only crumpled bags, an empty water bottle, and an unused condom tossed in a corner. My heart clenched, though I was no longer surprised. I took photos with my phone, adding them to the growing collection of evidence. Each image was another piece, a reminder that I could not allow Ethan and Melissa to get away with it. Back in the house, I set the keys in their place beside Ethan's alarm clock. I took an old book and sat on the living room sofa, pretending to read. The dim light fell across the pages, but I couldn't make out a single word. My head spun. I thought of Nathan, my son, who believed he was happy with Melissa, unaware of the truth. How would I tell him that his wife and his own father were betraying us? I thought of the chain of bakeries, of 40 years of work and sleepless nights, of all the fights with Ethan to defend my dream. He never fully understood it, but I trusted that he supported me. Now I knew he had just been waiting for the right moment to snatch it all away. An hour later, Ethan woke and staggered to the kitchen for water. He saw the keys on the counter and suspected nothing. "Still up, Nathan?" he asked sleepily. I smiled and replied, "No, I'm just reading a bit. Finish your water and go back to bed." He nodded, drank, and returned to the bedroom, snoring right away. I looked at him as if he were a stranger. That man, who once promised to be with me until the end, now planned to destroy what I loved most. But he didn't know I had already begun my counterattack. At dawn, I got up. Sunlight slid timidly through the bakery window. I was in my usual kitchen, kneading, prepping flans and pastries for a large hotel order. I pressed the dough with all my strength, channeling my rage into every motion. When I came home for breakfast, I made the effort to keep my face serene. Ethan was already up with a cup of black coffee in hand. I served him eggs and toast. "Ethan," I said calmly, "tomorrow I have to travel to Manchester to sign a contract with a new partner. I'll surely be back late. Can you take care of dinner?" I watched him from the corner of my eye. He looked up, surprised, but his eyes flashed with something that wasn't concern, it was relief. "A big contract?" he asked, taking my hand with feigned tenderness. "Don't worry. Go ahead. I'll handle it." But that glint in his eyes, that slight curve of his lips as if a weight had lifted, pierced my chest. He wanted me gone, and I knew exactly why. I smiled and nodded. "Thanks. I'll call you if I'm late." He took another sip of coffee. Then he stood, saying he had to get to the office early. As he left, I saw he'd left his phone on the table, and the screen lit up with a missed call. The name read M. I frowned. My heart thundered. Melissa Peter. I was sure it was her. Before I could touch the phone, Ethan came back, grabbed it in a rush, and turned off the screen in front of me. "I forgot it," he muttered with a forced smile. And he left. I stared at the door as it closed, feeling as if I'd been slapped. He didn't even bother to hide it anymore. That day I worked like a machine, delivering bread, signing invoices, smiling at customers. But my mind was only on Ethan and Melissa. I couldn't allow them to go on with their charade behind my back and behind Nathan's. I needed more evidence, to hear from their own mouths what they said when they thought no one was listening. That night I pretended to be tired. I went to bed early and told Ethan, "I have to get up early to catch the bus tomorrow, so I'm going to sleep." He nodded and patted my shoulder. "Rest, Nathan. Be careful on your trip." I lay down and closed my eyes, but I sharpened my ears, alert to every sound in the house. Near midnight, when Ethan's snores stopped, I heard him get up, carefully. The dim light of his phone glowed in the dark. He left the room with his cell, thinking I was asleep. I stayed still, my heart hammering. Then I rose slowly and tiptoed after him. I hid behind the thick living room curtain and saw him standing in a dark corner near the window. He lifted the phone to his ear and spoke in a low voice. "Yes, of course. Come to the house tomorrow. We won't have to go to a hotel anymore. Nathan has to leave the city to sign a contract and will be back late. I heard a soft laugh on the other end. Melissa's sweet voice. Great, Dad. We'll finally be able to relax. Ethan laughed. Yes, come early.